Ooh. At a Zoom update. Okay. Well, welcome back, everyone. And we are getting to the pointy end of this course. And today's session, we're going to talk about two particular road users. We're going to talk about cyclists and motorcyclists. So you'd recall we've been sort of digging into particular road user groups to identify some of the key issues that they have in safety on the road network and what we would look for as auditors. And we have done that for pedestrians. We've done vehicles sort of throughout. Heavy vehicles, Jamie talked a fair bit about heavy vehicles. Now we do cyclists and motorcyclists. So I'm just going to jump into it. We really wanted to try to today cover the requirements of cyclists for safe travel. And I will point you at some technical information that you can dig further into lots of issues. I mean, certainly we don't have time today to dig into a lot of issues in a lot of detail. I'll cover off a raft of things, but there's a lot more detail. And we'll get into some common audit issues and terminology. Okay, so at a general level, you can sort of think about cyclist safety with some of these requirements, I suppose. Separation, sightlines, space to ride, smooth surface, speed maintenance. I'll talk to you what that means in a safety sense shortly. Connectivity and correct information. So the easiest thing to do is to start by just thinking like a cyclist. The advantage we have with a lot of road safety auditors either are regular cyclists or have ridden bikes. So it's not that foreign an idea to be able to think like a cyclist and ask yourself all those logical questions. You know, how would I turn here? What would I see? Would I feel safe using this area? If I turned here, would cars see me? A door's going to open in front of me here. All of that usual sort of common sense questions. The prompt lists I took you through at the end of last session, they have there is a prompt list for cyclists, and we'll ask sort of some of these questions to guide you along. And in some road safety audits, you might just decide, well, I want to ride a bike through this area just to get that feel of it. I'll talk to you at the end about sort of specific thematic audits with like cyclists audits where you absolutely have to ride a bike through it, but you can decide to do that at any point. But really interesting, like cyclists, people that ride bikes, it's quite a varied cohort. We have young people, so we have kids riding, we have older people, but we also have within the envelope of cyclists there, we have commuter cyclists, we have recreational cyclists, we have cargo utility style cyclists, you know, they're moving stuff around. It's quite varied, and we're seeing more and more integration of things like e-bikes, and it's quite a mix, and it actually makes it quite hard to design projects to cater for cyclists as a cohort. We often find road designs that are catering for some cyclists, but maybe not other types of cyclists. And that's a bit of judgment call from the project team, often the designer and the project manager and the like. But as auditors, we can inject some of that thinking in. There is the 8 to 80 design philosophy. That's why I've got that 8 to 80 down the bottom. That's a sort of a city design philosophy that says if you design your city for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, you'll cover everything in between. And it holds somewhat true for cyclists, but not completely true. And it's really around some of those lycra-clad training cyclists we don't cover in that general sort of thinking. But one advantage we have for infrastructure for cyclists and auditing and the safety of cyclists is we do have a reasonable amount of documented information in terms of guidelines, standards, things that we can be looking at for how things could work reasonably well. I mentioned before, in the Austroads Guide Part 6, we have the prompt lists that cover off stuff for cycling. VicRoads, so the Victorian government came up with the shared path audit guidelines a while back. I think they're a relatively good document because, well, like the process of auditing is the same if it's a shared path, which you can audit, or a cycleway or the like. There are some sort of specific things that you might want to be looking at, and that covers off those reasonably well. I'll cover some of those later in today's session. But then the guidance for cycling infrastructure, as I say, it's pretty reasonable. We have Guide to Road Design Part 6A, Paths for Walking and Cycling. So it's a good resource. We have the Australian Standard 1742, Part 9, which is bicycle facilities. Austroads did at one point do this sort of collection of different aspects of Austroads guides that deal with cycling infrastructure and cycling safety, and sort of pull them into this one document, which I think it's pretty good read. Like it's a good resource to have a flick through. Then jurisdictions have sort of popped out with their own guidance. There's some Victorian guidance, VicRoads ones. There's the City of Melbourne one. So local jurisdictions sometimes coming up with their own design guidelines. So the bike lane design guidelines from City of Melbourne's a pretty good one. TMR Queensland has a lot of guidance and really good stuff for cycling facilities and walking facilities. And internationally, there's a raft of information available. This one, though, is sort of what's referred to as the Cycling Infrastructure Design Bible, the Crow Manual. So if you haven't heard of that one, that's it. That's pretty much, if you look at most well-progressed jurisdictions' design guidance for cycling safety, it's all been sort of generated from Crow and then adapted a little bit for their local jurisdictions. And of course, well, I'll give a prize. Where do you think the Crow Manual is from? Any guesses on what country? Prize to kick things off. Netherlands. Well done, Nathan. Yep, the Dutch, of course, very keen on cycling and have built the infrastructure and sort of got the cycling as a result of the infrastructure. And there was interest for cycling, but certainly continue to lead the way. Popped up a few other documents in there that you might want to look at as well. All right, let's get into some common audit findings. Now, this is a sort of classic audit finding, which is a longitudinal grate, is what I will refer to it as, where it's not going to be an issue for passenger vehicles, likely not to be an issue for motorcyclists, maybe a little slippery, but certainly cyclists will be able to drop a tire in there. And that one's somewhat compact, but you see some larger ones out there. Now, I've done expert witness on 2 legal cases associated with longitudinal grates. And yeah, I sort of say, well, I've been running the road safety audit course for a very long time. And when I get to the cycling safety section, it's the first example I give because it is really 101 in infrastructure, public infrastructure for cycling safety. And if you're thinking about cyclists, so one of those cases was the public road network, but the other one was a major shopping center upgrade, and they were adding, they were doing an extension basically, but within that they were trying to ensure that they were catering for active transport modes. So put bike parking facilities, one of those little pump stations and things, and then wayfinding signage off a shared path to get to that area. It just happened though that they ran, like, the way they were telling all the cyclists to go off that shared path was through a part of their car park that just had running longitudinal grates along it. And yes, unfortunately, somebody went into it, into one of them at dusk and seriously injured themselves. So One to be aware of, there's certainly lots of cycle-friendly grates available. If you're getting in at early design stages, there may be the possibility of not having something on the surface, but if you do need it on the surface, there's lots of bicycle-friendly options available. And I'm sure Max would have said, but if you have a download of the PDFs of the slides, which you can get from Learning Management System, and you want to click on the this little icon, it'll give you some more information about a topic like this. Actually, I'll just click on that one while we're at it, because I think let's pop it in here. Here you can sort of see there's some bicycle-friendly grates. That's the common bicycle-friendly grate you'd expect to see. So there you go. You can see these ones on a bridge, and there you go, cyclists going into it. Okay, get rid of that. Another one, probably not as well. I should say I haven't seen a longitudinal grate designed in a new infrastructure design for a very, very long time. But what I do see a lot of the time is that something like this exists, and they're doing upgrades to an intersection or changes, or sometimes even doing like bike facilities, adding bike lanes and things, and they haven't identified that that's there. So, and they're not planning to change it as part of their work. So that's where it often comes up. This one, yeah, not as common, but I mean, signal phasing is probably a common one for cyclists and cycle safety. This one, they were doing all these bike upgrades, adding, this is on Sydney Road, adding green paint, bicycle storage boxes, some threshold treatments. And they were putting a bike storage box out the front of this set of traffic signals as well. Except for when you get out there and you stand there, you notice that they run the lights with green lights for those coming out, but also a left turn green arrow. So that's just going to give the scenario where cyclists would possibly be coming up and storing at the front here. And that's sort of the purpose of those is to get the bicycles in view so the cars know they're there. But cyclists might want to be going straight, and a vehicle sort of behind them wanting to turn left. And now, while as an audit team, we sort of had long discussions about how do you risk rate this, because we don't think that anybody will miss this cyclist right in front of them. And we don't think anybody, is going to intentionally mow them down. I mean, that's sort of drifts outside the scope of road safety auditing to a degree. Anything in that sort of intentional act stuff is not really road safety audit, and nor is road rage, which was the big one we were worried about, because there'd be this driver would be coming up, beeping the cyclist there going, I'm allowed to be here, I'm meant to be here. And anyway, we sort of settled ourselves in the scenario that the driver will then just go sort of around and create these more dangerous situations of how they get around. The reality is that for something like that, they will change that. In the end, the risk rating isn't so critical. But it is important to note that our risk ratings are associated with road traffic crashes. It's not the risk of personal safety, like being mugged or anything like that. It's not any like terrorism safety, intentional act safety. It is road safety as what we would categorize as road trauma in our road trauma statistics. Happy to answer any questions and clarifications on that if anybody needs. All right, let's get you doing something. I just want you to type into the chat any issues you might identify in an existing conditions road safety audit at this location. And I'll also chuck a prize for anybody who can tell me what country this is. But good, I'm seeing it coming in already. I will give out some prizes as we go, but yeah, we'll see. There we go. We've got the answer on the country, Wales, from, got a username there. Loretta will be able to work it out. So it is Wales. Yes, correct. Right. Now we're seeing some ideas come in. This is good. Thank you. I'll give it a second or two. Loretta, if you worked out who that username is.
Yep, I have it, Sam.
Oh, good on you, Sam. Have you been to Wales, Sam? You speak Welsh? Translate that for me in Welsh. I reckon it translates to cyclist dismount. Hey, thanks, Sam. Okay. This is good. Well done, everyone. We're seeing lots of good things. I'm going to give Jordan a prize to kick it off. Jordan found the longitudinal grate. I've just been talking to you about it and seeing if anybody spotted it. Yes, so it for a cyclist coming along the road, it wouldn't be bad. They'd sort of transverse over. It might be a bit slippery again. You wouldn't quite like it, but certainly along the cycleway, there's an issue. So well spotted there. But also very good spotting around, okay, we've got a sight distance issue, and that came up pretty quickly. Mark was in there very quick. Mark can have a prize for that, being quick on that. Yeah, so this is an interesting one, isn't it? We've got the sight distance issue. The fence is blocking sight lines for the vehicle coming up, being able to see a cyclist, or the cyclist being able to see a vehicle. I got some people then looking at the tactile ground surface indicators. They're a bit of a mess, aren't they? They sort of go all over the place. Could be a sort of slippery issue for cyclists, but are they nicely sort of or correctly aligned? And I'd want to get out there and have a look at what's going on. It's a bit of a mess. Let's go back to this sight distance issue and sort of understand this. So this sign has obviously been put in because of this sight distance issue. Now, has that rectified the issue? Well, no, absolutely not. And I mean, I have a particular dislike of cyclist dismount signs. I feel that they are probably the most useless sign there is. All it really does is help me when I'm road safety auditing to identify issues, because somebody else has identified it and then they put a sign up for it. Cyclists don't dismount, and it means that the issue is just not being addressed. I mean, there's a picture of sort of the height of stupidity of the way sort of your speed maintenance for cyclists would not exist. And there's no way a cyclist is going to stop, dismount, walk, get back on for 10 meters, dismount. So there's just absolutely no point in that. And our role as auditors, importantly here, is to be the voice of reason, to be the realist and say, no, it's still an issue, and we should be looking for ways to lessen it. So some ways, this could be lessened as a risk. I mean, there's many options available. Their practicality varies, and you need to know local circumstances really well, but got everything from sort of cut the fence back, have it a low fence. Now, that might be hard depending on what is next to it and if it's properties and how that all works, but that's one option. Open up some sight lines like that. You got big sort of options of where you could divert the whole path away from this, go behind that, building, divert the path back in. It looks like I've got some land out there. You could raise this whole crossing. You could even give cyclists priority. I mean, you're still going to have a sight distance issue, but you might have better ability to slow vehicles. Or there's something you could think about doing which is to slow the cyclists down using physical infrastructure. Now, in cycling infrastructure design, they very much don't like the old fence that, I hope you know what I'm sort of about to draw here. Trying to draw, where you'd make the rider come up and then go in that way and then try and go through. That's been sort of very strongly opposed by the riding community. It's not necessarily from a safety perspective, though, but it's things like a cargo bike, just can't get around it. Any sort of longer bikes, bigger bikes often can't get around it. It's a big disruption. So that's generally frowned upon. From a safety perspective, we know they sort of do a reasonable job, but you've got to be a little bit conscious as an auditor, making recommendations on something that's really against other design practices for one reason or another. The advice these days is to more do it with things like splitter islands to try and slow and creating that really clear point. But yeah, you'll be able to provide some advice as an auditor, and they'll take on what they believe is appropriate. I thought I'd show this example of an audit that was done quite a while back, a slightly different form. Oh, it's kind of the same, but the interesting thing about this one, let me give you the background. So this was a big subdivision, and it was completed essentially. The civil public infrastructure works had all been done. They were building houses out there, and they had decided through that at some point to make their footpath a shared path facility. And anyway, so that was one thing that was asked to be looked at in part of a post-opening road safety audit. And that's okay if your client sort of guides you at a particular issue they've got. You're still going to look at everything else, but you'll look at that issue. Anyway, we looked at it and then identified that in some of the locations there was a high fence and the garage was there, and now we had a shared path and we had the vehicles coming in and out. And really, we were then encouraging cyclists and cyclists of higher speeds to be using that area. Now, this was in Victoria, so riding a bike on the sidewalk, the footpath, is illegal unless you're riding with a child, and children can do it. So generally, you would expect any cyclists of any higher speeds to be on the road. Anyway, long and short of it was that it was identified as an issue. It was put in, suggestions to have those fences cut down and the like. Interestingly, though, the council that had commissioned the audit asked for that to be removed as an issue, that particular one. And this is where you will find yourself in these awkward situations as auditors, as you progress in your auditing career, where you've identified as an issue, and they wanted it removed because it was very hard for them because they'd approved all these designs in the scheme and they couldn't really do anything about it. It was on now private property, and they said, we can't do anything about it. Can you remove it? And the answer is no. You can't be removed out of the audit. If we've identified it as an issue, it stays in there. This is where you can write all of that. That's where they can write all of that. That's over to them. That's where they justify doing something, not doing something different. I'm always happy to listen to concerns they have and try to help them in the recommendations. But that was it. Now, you're often in a very awkward situation there because that's essentially your client, and your client's asking for something and you're saying no. And yeah, it's the integrity of auditors. You have to stick to your guns once you've identified it and the like. So your audit finding doesn't change. Your risk rating really probably is not going to change because unless they provide you with information that adjusts your risk rating, Your recommendations, you can adjust, you can add things. If they have other ideas, you can collaborate, you can talk to other experts, get their thoughts and their ideas. But then really the way the official process works is if they cannot do anything on this, they write that in there and explain it. And that's their issue. Now, surface issues. So we've got, pits, grates, pit lids, surface covers, all these things in the road environment. And cyclists will potentially be destabilized by these, but they will also avoid them as they see them. So change riding lines, and that can actually pose some dangers. So just have a think about that as well. Like lane misalignment is an issue that pops up a bit. So what I mean by lane misalignment, so you can see the left lane here. Well, that sort of runs straight into the footpath, and then this lane sort of runs into this lane. And as a result of that, what happens is that you get this sort of convergence of vehicles, and you're going to have sort of side swipe crashes with vehicles, minor issues. But you can imagine if a cyclist comes along in that and gets in the mix, they're going to be really the ones that get the more severe injury. And certainly, this is probably a good example, actually, if I delete everything I've just sort of put on there, of how cyclists are often treated at intersections, which is just drop off any cycle facilities you've had and let them fend for themselves. So I think we can do a lot better than that if we genuinely think about cyclists through intersections. There is a NACTO guide, a US guide, which is actually titled "Don't Give Up at Intersections." That's the title of the guide, and it's a cycling safety infrastructure guide, which is it's a good document. Oh, sorry. In terms of what you can do about this, well, first of all, using good lane guidance techniques such as RPMs. So not RRPMs, RPMs, which is the little ones we use in intersections, raised pavement. They're sort of like a dome to make sure people sort of have that direction of travel. So that's certainly one. You can alter your signal phasing to assist, and you can, for cyclist safety, do these proper protected intersections, which is essentially where you'd sort of almost have the bikes having their facility out and maybe coming back on. This would be a hard site to do. It'd take a lot of design thinking, but those sort of things are possibilities. I'll jump past that one. Okay. Roundabouts. So cyclists at roundabouts has been a challenge. It's certainly an area. We know roundabouts have wonderful road safety benefits for passenger vehicles and certainly major reductions in death and serious injury. But cyclists don't fare as well at roundabouts. Now we'll start with urban single lane roundabouts like this one. The old guidance was to try to get the cyclists away, pushed to the edge of traffic. So you can see the bike facility comes in here, and then you're trying to sort of keep the cyclists away from any danger. So that was old design practice. Two major issues with this. One was associated with vehicles overtaking cyclists through the roundabout and clipping the cyclists. So that was an issue. The second was this phenomenon called look but fail to see, which is where a driver is approaching up here. They are not constrained by sight distance. They can see up the road. A cyclist is coming along, and the driver proceeds to drive straight into the cyclist. So they've looked, but for some reason they have not acted appropriately as a result of the approaching cyclist. The behavioral psychologists and the human factors experts, they sort of love this phenomenon in the sense that it's so meaty for their understanding of how humans think and work and act, and subconsciously think. And they talk about things like that's not what they're looking for directly. So it takes longer to process. It's talk about threat theory, like it's not a threat. So again, it'll take longer to process. They talk about saturation numbers. So there's at certain points, enough cyclists will bring looking for cyclists to the front of the mind of the drivers, and they'll be more alert to that. So it's lots of interesting stuff. Position was another one. It's not in the direct position they were looking, even though it's very clearly in that area. It's again, and this is all about slowing down the reaction time. It's not that any of these drivers were intentionally coming up and mowing down the cyclist in there. There you go. So Nick's saying, yep, been there in that situation very recently, close call. So the design guidance changed. The design guidance changed to encourage cyclists to, what we say, claim the lane. And so you'll see your cyclist facility comes up here, and then the idea is to try and push cyclists out to the middle. So they're in a better position for people to see. There's no ability to do that sort of overtaking because the cyclist has the lane. Give a prize. What's that symbol called? If anybody's. Well done, Emily. It is a sharrow. That's correct. Emily gets a prize. It's the mashing of the two words shared and arrow together. It's to indicate a space where you'll have that cyclists are sharing the pavement with vehicles. Now, okay, this does have some evidence around it to show it is safer than the pushing cyclists to the outside. But really, I suppose if we think about our 8 to 80-year-old design philosophy, and you're not going to be encouraging your 8-year-old to claim the lane, are you? It's sort of something that confident cyclists will do, but I don't think it's quite getting us to where we want. I'll come back to some more best practice design for single lane roundabouts, but I'll just explain the complexity of a 2-lane roundabout if you've got a cycle route through a 2-lane roundabout. I mean, in like the Dutch will just go, well, yeah, okay, if it's 2-lane roundabout, it's grade separated for cyclists. Cyclists will have their own overpass or underpass, but they're like, you can't really do this. In Australia, we do have a lot of this where it's sort of, okay, are there facilities we can provide? We have tried different sort of designs with some features for cyclists, separation at the roundabout, so that bit of separation does help, not mixing them in the traffic, and providing facilities to get through, to provide better sight lines, better angles, better storage points. But it is a very hard scenario. The single lane roundabout, though, where we understand best practice is Dutch-inspired protected roundabouts, where you have a circulating carriageway for cyclists and pedestrians, if you have pedestrians there as well. And you have then the inner circulating carriageway for passenger vehicles or other vehicles. So you can see that one here, that's Moray Street. Got a link there to another snippet on this one. There's the pictures of it built, and you can see there that the cyclists can sort of get on that and circulate around where they need to go, protected away, bit of buffer area for the vehicle. You can see coming in here, it can store here, waiting as cyclists come up, and the other vehicles can get around. So that works pretty well. That's a helpful one on this one as well, because the driver can get into there and wait, as opposed to if you have your crossing point right up here, then vehicles are usually storing over the crossing point for cyclists or pedestrians. Sure, if you've got a longer vehicle, you've got a trailer or something, you're still going to be hanging over that. But this works really well. We did evaluate it. We had cameras out there for a few weeks, monitoring things. Really great compliance. High 80% of cyclists using the facility. The others sort of just running through like a normal roundabout. But lots of good use of it, and vehicles slowing down nicely, giving way. We were really impressed. Yeah, so as auditors, we we're going to see a lot more designs come in that are trying to be more proactive in encouraging riding, and that's great. We do want to see that. Our role is to ensure that we are having that safety focus on it. We can get caught up as an industry and pushing for something that increases mode share in a particular mode at the cost of safety. And our role is to ensure that no, it's not at the cost of safety. We're doing it in the safest manner. Now, a lot of the time, improving safety improves, you get more people riding and you get more people walking because we made it safer and all of that. But occasionally it may not. This one was an interesting one where they were proposing this little two-lane roundabout, very hard, as I say. Everybody's trying to innovate, trying to come up with new ways to do this. So they sort of had some separation. And then for the right-turning cyclists, it was going to be an area here to prop and wait. So the audit team was just concerned with a couple of things on that. Some understanding of the area and who uses this, and the fact that it is recreational cyclists, and there's a few of them, and they're coming in, and they're first of all, not many would be able to prop here. Maybe one would possibly, but the others would spill out. Second, you've got your larger vehicles coming around here, and we know this area is a little bit susceptible to a sweeping vehicle, so it's not great from that sort of storage perspective. So again, it's probably not while they're trying, and you appreciate that, probably not the best, and we can help them with thinking about other options or other ways to design that. Right, so this is a interesting one out near Traralgon. And at the design phase, looks quite impressive in the sense that they're planning a dedicated cycle facility through the roundabout, so separated cycle facility, which is great. So the cyclists aren't in there mixing with all the traffic as they go through. Now, it didn't cater for the right turn. I haven't got that second sheet on there, but the bulk of the traffic was going straight through, but as in cycle traffic. And so it all looks good. But I think the important thing is thinking about how then it gets rolled out, and why sort of post-opening audits can be really helpful. So once you get out there, you go, I don't know if cyclists would actually know that that's meant to be a cycle facility. Okay, we've got a little cyclist only sign, but it's pretty small, and cyclists coming up here may just enter into traffic. So I think the little tweak of adding just a bit of green paint there would have absolutely done the job, to just say that's for cyclists and up you go, you get your own separated area. Now, it's not the traditional use of green marking on the pavement. Green marking on the pavement was traditionally you do it at a conflict point between a vehicle and a cyclist, and it is to alert the vehicle driver that, hey, a cyclist could be coming at this location, and be more alert. But as you can see, I mean, here's another example of where it's used to try to guide cyclists to a particular point. This is so there's an underpass here, and they're trying to encourage the cyclists to go under if they want to go through. So it's a different way of using green marking. Dooring is another issue that you'll be identifying as an auditor, no doubt. And dooring is simply, that opening the door in front of cyclists. And the bulk of the death we've seen around Australia and New Zealand associated with dooring has been actually a secondary impact. So they hit the door, which doesn't kill the cyclist, but it's where they land then in traffic and are run over or struck by faster moving vehicles they're running alongside. the hitting of the door itself it can be pretty serious, that's for sure. So I'm not saying that's not an issue. But this has and continues to cause a lot of challenges. We have areas like this, which are extremely challenging. Again, Sydney Road. The reason it's so challenging is that it's a clear way. So at points in the day, this is all like, so if you wanted to just paint all of that green, well, at some point you would be points of the day, that's the middle of a running lane. And just painting it isn't actually going to really alleviate that issue so much. So here, this one isn't a clear way, but yeah, this is the side of one of those storing fatalities, and it's marked and it's there, but we aren't providing really the best facility to separate there. But the Copenhagen style bicycle facilities is what we know is extremely effective in reducing dooring issues. So that's where you put the cyclist to the curbside and you put any parking out into the roadway. And if you undertake any road safety audits of any facilities like this, some little tweaks like it is inherently safer, but there's tweaks that can be done to make it even better. So some of the issues we have are certainly around these conflict points where vehicles are coming in and cyclists are coming up, and we don't have the best sight lines because of parked vehicles often. So you can talk about, where parking would be. One little trick and tip, and I put it in most audits of these that I do, to make this a sort of cobblestone or a raised area, the turn point, just to really slow the vehicles right at that point. So the cyclists have got time to see, okay, cars coming, and slow down. Are they going to stop? The vehicle sees the rider. There's other bits and pieces and tweaks which you sort of pick up when you're out there on the ground or looking at the design and pondering, well, how a pedestrian's going to handle this, how a disabled parking how's that going to work, that they can get to a point to get up. And drainage is one where it's more in the design. Rarely as auditors we're picking on drainage things, but it does mean that they'll create gaps and bits and pieces in order to get the water through. So we think about how that plays out in a safety perspective. Certainly the width of it, you want it to be wide. At some point, people will park in it and drive in it. So we saw that for quite a few that were quite wide, and taxis used them as a storage rank for a while. And so you might have to think about the entry and how that's done. And certainly the first point of it, you might have vehicles hitting it, cyclists hitting it, cyclists coming behind other cyclists, and you've got to think about how you pre-warn and line mark and make sure that it's very clear that they're going to come into something and they have to get to the left of it. So when you have a shared path and you cross a road, there is the option to give the shared path priority. So this is just a bit of a mess of road rules and how it plays out, because in a number of jurisdictions, you are not allowed to ride a bike across a pedestrian crossing. So they couldn't just make it a wombat crossing or a zebra crossing, because technically it would be illegal for the rider to ride over it. Now, the reality is cyclists just ride over pedestrian crossings anyway, so that doesn't really matter, but you can't really build things that go against the road rules, if that makes sense. So the way they have been getting around this is to have this set up. Actually, I think it's that set up now. They updated the standard signage for it. Okay, so what it's doing here is creating essentially the shared path here, and saying that's a road now. That's a road. We're on a road as cars here, but the road here, which happens to be a shared path, has priority, and so it's simply marked like a road that doesn't have priority, the giveaway sign. Yes, they've added this supplementary plate, which holds no legal standing. It's just a supplementary plate to tell you what you're actually going to be expecting there. And that's how they have got around this. Now, it becomes an interesting one. Here's another example of it. Here's one, and this one's fairly clear. It's quite in your face and seems to work quite well. Some really important features from my perspective on this, from safety auditor perspective, is to ensure it's raised or there's features to slow vehicles on the approach. Okay. Second one is to understand your sightline requirements. So it's actually a little bit complex to work out sight distances. You do use normal stopping sight distance, but you're also trying to do it for both the cyclist and the vehicle. And Victoria, in this case, has the best design guidance on sight distance at shared path crossings. It takes me about 20 minutes to run through how to do that, so I won't do it now. But there is available public guidance on how to do it, or I'm happy to talk to you if you're in this situation, you want to run through it. That's the sort of cyclist's perspective. They see it, and it's a fairly continuous run through. They used yellow. Yellow got the color, so you'll see these. Queensland's got a good guidance document on this as well. Yellow is used, and it's we're getting sort of the whole rainbow of colors on the pavement these days. Yellow because green would just be for cyclists, and red usually used for bus facilities, and yellow was thought for that shared path facility, but it does vary. One thing I think is important to understand if you're doing a road safety audit of a cycle facility like this, and don't just think of this in isolation either. Think about the crossings further up. So you're going to sort of ride the whole route to get a feel for it. Is it out of context, or is there another one that is out of context? Actually, this route, there is another one that's out of context, and it really annoys me because you sort of go through 3 that are cyclist priority, and then the 4th one is flipped, and it's really not that obvious. And I just sometimes sit out there just watching, and 90% of cyclists just continue straight through, not looking. So alerted the council to this. So hopefully something might happen. We'll do a few more. We will have a little coffee break, and I have to make sure I give Loretta enough time to show you your big assignment that is at the end of this module. So local area traffic management is wonderful in the sense that it slows vehicles down in these urban areas where we do see kids and cyclists, people walking. But traditional local area traffic management, such as chicanes, one-way slow points, small roundabouts and the like, they tend to squeeze cyclists in with vehicles, and that can be a safety issue in its own right. So while we are getting the advantage of slowing vehicles down through these areas, we can sometimes squeeze cyclists in. I think this one, though, is an elegant design of, and it shows cyclist bypass facilities. So that's meaning that the vehicles will come in, they will have this one-way slow point, which is a common local area traffic management feature, which is basically you make it only wide enough for one vehicle to go through, and then you make them work it out, and they have to slow down, and you go, and they come in. And it works really well. But the cyclist doesn't get caught up in that squeezing mix. They've got their own bypass facility. Okay, shared path audit guidelines. I mentioned these at the start, and shared path audits, you're going to follow the same process as the usual road safety audit. And the differences are you will ride the route. So there I am out there with a colleague getting ready to ride a whole lot of shared paths to audit them. And I suppose there's some practical things for you you might find interesting. I've got a dash cam on the bike, so I can record all of that route, connect it up to Bluetooth on my AirPods, and so I can talk as well about what I'm seeing. So that's you get a nice capture there that you can run through back in the office. So we on this one, we ran through the whole area once just writing, and then we went through a second time much slower and stopped at some of the issues to get photos of them. We could have just taken them off the dash cam footage, but we wanted to measure them sometimes and get a little more detail. On my back there, I've got an electronic level. So that's to have a look at the ramp grades and things like that. How steep are some areas? I also use it to measure distance of hazards off path or on path, or height of underpasses is another one. You're gonna and thinking about that. That's about the main equipment I have. I use a. Have I got it on the next slide? Yeah, I'll use it as I'll come back. I'll go back to that slide. I use an app called Context Cam. I think there's lots of them available, but you means your photos. You can add some notes to it, so you can add notes. It obviously tells you when it was and your direction, but it's got nice little location. But then also, well, most photos, any photos you take on your phone, they're GIS tagged, so you can then just drop them all into a map, and they spread out along the corridor exactly where those issues are. So that's a really nice, easy thing for a client to then pick up and know where all the issues are. Back to this though, that's only one Wally. And that's the danger of jumping back between slides. Wally, one Wally, just don't recount that Wally. Common safety considerations: path widths, obstacles, hazards, horizontal and vertical alignment, surface conditions, and quality. Yeah, that's certainly one. And I've got a picture later, and I'll talk to you a bit about that. And the intersections. So intersections between paths, but also intersections of paths and roads. So path intersections, we do want to have that clear priority. And this one in the picture there is just a bit unclear, isn't it? Which has priority, and that's a very new bit of path. It's just so it can be designed early to be a bit clearer on priority. Good sight lines, advanced warning, sign guidance, 90-degree intersections are best, and you might need to manage speeds at some of these locations. So, I mean, those are somewhat not that different to road intersection principles as well. Another example there is just a bit unclear which path has priority. Actually looks like the path that doesn't have priority has priority there, the one we're on in this photo, but it's actually that path that has priority. So it could be a little bit confusing. So roadside hazards or pathside hazards, drop-offs, any fixed hazards and things like that. We do want to think about those as well. Remember, a lot of these shared paths, we see dogs and kids and all sorts of things happening, meaning that a rider who's commuting through the area or the like and traveling along at maybe 20 or 25 kilometers an hour, they may have to avoid something, and the road side or the path side is potentially an issue, drop-offs and even like hazards like this and things. You want to have a think about how far they are. If you go to Australia's Guide to Road Design Part 6A, there's lots of information about offsets you'd expect to hazards and when you would put cycle-friendly fencing up. So you can see there they've got the fencing before dropping into that at that area, and different, lots and lots of different hazards to think about in paths. A lot of shared paths are in floodways. It's land that they can't build buildings on because it floods, but it's great for cycleways and the like. But it does mean that they will get a lot of debris and things at different points in time after flood events and the like. So might be having a look at what there is there. So I mentioned cyclist-friendly fencing. So the concern is a handlebar or a pedal being caught on the fence. And so this one, you could see how that could happen on those wooden blocks that If the rider misjudged it or had to avoid something, that could be an issue. So cyclist-friendly fences essentially will put a rail that sort of protrudes out to run along at shoulder height, at hip height. So this one's just shoulder height, but you might put hip height as well. And that means that, yeah, you're unlikely to catch a handlebar or a pedal on that. So this one is an interesting one where the design team have really been thinking about safety in the sense that they've put a barrier system to separate vehicles from getting onto this shared path that they're building. And so that's really great from that vehicle perspective. The bit that hasn't been thought about, though, is a cyclist striking the back of that barrier system. And if you've ever been out there and seen one of the back of those barrier systems, it's pretty sharp, strong metal area. And we certainly have seen some horrible crashes involving cyclists hitting the back of those barrier systems and runners as well. But the cyclists obviously going more speed and dropping onto those. So you can look to back-to-back W-beam them. So there's lots of barrier products available. Now there's like ones that are much thinner than this as well. So back-to-back systems. There are plastic cover, post capping. There's lots of different things available. Again, as an auditor, probably not your role to give them the absolute answer. Identifying the issue and telling them to have a think about some sort of protection on the back of the barrier system as well is a good one. So we need to often prevent vehicles from entering areas and putting something in the pathway. Okay, we may have to do that, but making sure it's well delineated, clear, so at night it can be seen. I mean, this chain, I think somebody's tied that bag there to warn other cyclists at night that there's a chain there, don't go around that side. I think something like this is far better if you need to have something in the middle of a path for any reason. Those are flexible bollards. They have retroreflective marking. It's got clear delineation on the approach. So I think that's more what I would say is better practice. Ideally, you don't have anything like a cable stay in the path, but sometimes you can't avoid these things. We do have these thematic audit fact sheets, which we put into the learning management system, so you'll be able to have a look at it. They just explain a little bit of those. If you're asked to do a cycling audit, road safety audit cycling specific, like what is the actual difference? Because the process is still the same. It's really around sort of how you go about it, that you ride the route, having a look at some specific features for cyclists as well. Where are we going on time? It's right on the hour. I don't think we'll do that quiz, Loretta, if that's all right. I'd rather give people time to have a stretch, grab a coffee. Let me talk to them about motorcycles for a bit and give you enough time to take them through their order findings. So what can we take? What do you say? 4 minutes?
Sounds good.
All right.
See
4
you in
minutes
4
and we'll
minutes.
get back into it. Thanks. Okay, let's get back into it. We're going to talk about motorcyclists. So this is a road user group that a lot less auditors are motorcyclists than cyclists, and a lot less have ever been on a bike, or at least on a bike on the public road network. So I think it's important for us to get a few things in our mind about what to look for the safety of motorcyclists. I was doing some Austroads work at the moment, and we're doing modelling of death and serious injury out to 2050 in different jurisdictions. And yeah, as you start to see over the next 20 years, 20, 25, 30 years, motorcyclists start to dominate our road trauma profile. Vehicles get safer, autonomy integrates in, a lot of the road features and road upgrades that are planned and are coming online are protecting vehicle occupants, and to a reasonable degree pedestrians and cyclists. They're still overrepresented in these future scenarios, but motorcyclists really, it's eye-opening how much trauma there is. So motorcycles represent about 3% of vehicle kilometers traveled and about 20 or 18% of death and serious injuries. So you can see the overrepresentation there. So this module, very similar to the cyclist one. What do we need for motorcyclists to be safer? What facilities can we provide? What's any technical information available? Some audit issues and some treatments. But yeah, so I mentioned some of those figures there, but motorcyclists are 20 to 30 times more likely to be killed and seriously injured than a car for the same journey. I mean, that's staggering. And certainly if motorcyclists did not exist and somebody came to any government and said, we would like to, deploy this device on the public road network, absolutely not. That would never stand. And it's sort of almost laughable at the reaction to like e-scooters, for example, that governments are saying absolutely not. This is the most dangerous thing. And you're like, oh my God. And you give licenses and register motorcycles. Not to say that e-scooters are, safe, but the comparatively, it's interesting. So there is less information available for infrastructure and design and maintenance practices that improve motorcycle safety than there is for any other road user, really. But we did create back in the day, 20 years ago now, but we started out making this thing called the Making Roads Motorcycle Friendly Guide, which is trying to capture what we knew about road design and operation and maintenance that had a big effect on motorcyclists more than any other road user. Oh, that's a bit tricky with Wally's in there, isn't it? 2 Wally's on a slide. I've given away some answers there, but anyway. So a number of jurisdictions have now picked up this Making Roads Motorcycle Friendly Guide, and that's something that we'll certainly make available in the learning management system, and you'll be able to have a look at it. And it's fairly simple. We've added some videos to it. We updated it not too long ago, added some videos, some bits of information. But I like to audit, and I'm thinking about motorcycle safety with these 5 S's. So sight, surface, signs, strike, and speed. So can the rider be seen? Can the rider see what's coming up? Is the surface appropriate? Have we got signs to warn, inform, and guide? What happens when a rider crashes? What are they hitting? How are they hitting it? And what speed does all this happen at? So you remember risk is likelihood times consequence, or likelihood times severity, or probability times severity, or probability times consequence. The chance of something bad happening, and then how bad it, like the magnitude of badness, essentially. And if we think about those 5 S's, we sort of go, okay, so the surface and the sight and the signs are reducing the chance crashes happen in the first place. And that's really important for us to do. The strike is about understanding how bad it's going to be and trying to manage the energy and the consequence of the crash. Speed influences both. It reduces the chance crashes happen, and if they do happen, the outcome. So what I'm going to do is just jump through each of these S's one at a time. I don't have a lot of slides on each one, just enough to spark that thought in your mind. But if we think about a motorcyclist compared to a vehicle, they are smaller. They are smaller, so they're hidden behind objects more. You can see there, you got even a very small car there. And you can see the difference in width. So I'll give a question, give out some more prizes, make sure you're all back and listening. Why do you think that, what is the purpose of this safety margin? Not that we would really use that too much. This is thinking about design envelopes for different vehicles, but why a safety margin that big when the vehicle's only got that 100 mil, essentially, a little buffer? Any ideas? Speed wobbles. That's not a bad one from Nick there. It's in the general. Saddlebags is another interesting one. Yeah, the lean is the one. Andrew's on it. Kind of links a little bit with speed wobbles. That's a slightly different thing, though. I like those. I like all those three, though. But we'll give Andrew the prize. It is about the amount that a rider will lean to make turns around corners or curves. I was out and I took this photo just to show a very little sign covering up, the bulk of a rider. So that's interesting. But we also want to think about where vehicles will prop. And that's, as an auditor, a really important thing to do. When you're given a design, so an upgrade to an intersection or changes to the configuration of an intersection or an area, like saying, okay, that's how it looks. How will it then operate? Where will vehicles prop? What sight lines will be blocked by other vehicles? And just having a sort of think a little bit about that. I'll show you a little site where that became an issue shortly. So we want to provide riders with good warning and of what's coming up, especially on those motorcycle touring routes. So they've got really good understanding. The motorcyclists are very attuned to road signage. So we have the advantage there that we can warn of different features and they'll react. This sign is used on the approach to a curve that tightens. Now, this is sort of different to a hairpin curve, which would be it would have one radius, tight radius. This is one that tightens up. Now, I will give a prize if somebody can tell me the technical term for a curve that tightens like this, that has two radiuses, one radius there and then a tighter radius. Or broken back, that's good from Mark. Mark can have a prize for that. It's not the actual term I was going for, but it is used. And Abe's got it, compound curve. Well done. There's a prize there as well. It is a compound curve. So the compound curves are extremely hazardous for motorcyclists. Now, they're not great for four-wheeled vehicles, but it's a compound curve. It's not even the most severe compound curve you'll find. It is, So a rider coming in, they sort of position themselves and set themselves at a 252 radius curve, and then it tightens up a bit. And what that means is the rider's set at a speed and a lean and a line, and then it changes on them. And this has 4 motorcycle run-off road crashes to the outside of this curve. Probably got it does have a unsealed road that's dragging a bit of gravel on there, which compounds the issue. There you go. I just used an issue compounding an issue on a compound curve. Sorry, I will do this even though I'm almost sure everybody here knows it. But I will just tell you why I'm talking about radius. Like, that's how we talk about curves and how sharp they are. Like, it's like a big circle and what's the radius, and then another circle there. What's the radius? We talk about radius of curves. Here's that example I was talking to you about. So if we've got a vehicle number 1 turning in and vehicle number 2 coming up and sightlines being blocked, motorcyclists could be either. But which one do you think more often is the motorcyclist in this scenario that we see from trauma data? 1 or 2? Put it in the chat. You don't lose any points. Have a guess. Oh, look at that. Everybody's on it. It is two. Two is more often the motorcyclists. They're traveling along. They're easily hidden by those other vehicles. The driver's sort of poking their nose of their vehicle around and goes. And we see motorcyclists are more susceptible to the injury, of course, at lower speeds because they're not protected. And yeah, we see some pretty bad outcomes. That's that side on the ground there. You can see, well, this one, the Pajero's turning in. The truck would have blocked the view of any vehicle in the other lane, but you can imagine smaller vehicles would even block the view of motorcyclists at different points. And another one just showing, different things. Block the view of rider. So really, I mean, the principle to take out of it from a auditor perspective is to say that while some things we may not think about as sightline constraints, they could be. And if we have the ability to open up sight triangles from even things like smaller things like trees, signal controller boxes, different signage and the like, it can be helpful. Okay, surface. So it goes a little bit back to that lean we were talking about. So we talked about the lean from a design envelope perspective, but if you think about the lean and the importance then of the surface, we have this huge reliance on the surface from the sense that the center of gravity has been pushed out and we're pushing, and all of the ability to retain staying upright is reliant on the surface traction there. So those are the areas. This is a sort of diagram showing where a rider is leaning through a curve is the most important surface for a rider. The approach where they're braking to a degree and the rest of the road network, surface can be an issue. It's not as much of an issue. So we want like a really good, consistent, good grip surface, no surprises is what we want. Unfortunately, that's not what we see out there, is it? We see depressions in the road, and that's one that, done a couple of motorcycle fatality reports now associated with riders leaning on popular touring routes. And there's been a depression in the road like this. And what it does, it hasn't knocked the rider off, but on both occasions, the rider has had to pull the bike upright and go into the opposing lane to just hold control of it and been struck by a vehicle coming the other way. So these depressions in the road, I mean, this is going to be an issue for pretty much any road user, but different potholes and those sort of things, obviously issues. Any sorts of surface changes can be an issue. Around work sites, the debris, the gravel and things, this isn't at all the worst I've seen, but one I had an immediate photo of where we've got to think about motorcyclists, and we are seeing a lot more of those food delivery drivers and those sorts of things. I think I have a picture later of steel plates, but that's also often used around work sites as well. And also scouring out of the pavement and leaving, drops and lips and things that really are enough to destabilize motorcycles or bicycles for that matter. Patching and where we have the connection there, often in the riding line, and things will break up. So if we're able to do full width patching, that's great. And anytime we do have these sorts of issues, we really want to warn the rider in the time it takes to actually rectify the issue. This is a very problematic one. It's on a popular motorcycle touring route. It's around a curve. A rider is going to be coming in, and really they're locked in a line and a speed pretty much. They don't have the option much to go inside this. That all they could really do is go outside it or pull the bike upright and try to regain that, which would put them onto the other side of the road. Yeah, so there's a steel plate, and again, it connects often with the work sites and longer term works and the things. Try not to do that, and we certainly would pick it up as auditors. It's going to be unavoidable in some situations, but certainly warning of it, adding skid resistance surfacing to it, because when it's wet and it's dark and the motorcyclist is following behind other vehicles, it can be a pretty hazardous scenario for a rider. And there are good different treatments available. There's one that's got the skid resistant surfacing and the color to sort of highlight it, so that's not bad. Doesn't appear to be bolted down that well, but that's yeah. And any pit lids, services, anything you're going to see in a design that's in the circulating carriageway or in the roadway at a design stage, we want to try and get that out. All right. And if it's there already, we want to try and highlight it better. So it's one at a roundabout, and you can think that a rider's sort of leaning a little bit. They're also looking, they're also very much looking for all these vehicles that are going to pull in front of them and the like and where they're going. So yeah, we really don't want that sort of stuff. And improving surface conditions, all sorts of ways that we can do it with water blasting or different high skid resistance surfacing techniques and the like. So lots of options available to us. There's some high skid resistance surfacing as an example. Sealing right up to the edge of a barrier is another thing that assists motorcycle safety. A rider, if they were to go into a curve too fast, and it's an unsealed area, they really have to pull the bike upright or they're off, and that's it. And curbing. So the more mountable the curbing, the better for a rider. It just gives them a chance to stay on the bike. Barrier curbing, which is this one with the vertical surface, that will knock a rider off. And in fact, it actually doesn't need to be a big lip to knock a rider off. So if we are doing concrete aprons or anything like that, we want to be clear at highlighting that. I have this little video here. I don't think there's actually a very badly designed roundabout or anything like that. I just wanted to show you how small a lip can destabilize a rider. In fact, they've done a pretty good job. They've highlighted the lip quite well. So also shows you there, like the roadside infrastructure. So the grab rail sort of stops the bike pretty abruptly there, doesn't it? Yeah, I was showing that in New Zealand not too long ago, and they said, "Oh, we'll use PVC piping." I should have done that in the Kiwi accent, which I thought, oh, yeah, so it'll break away. That's interesting. I've not seen that before. Okay, so another surface thing we use a lot of is line marking, and line marking can be slippery. So thermoplastic line marking, when wet, after it's been out there for a while and been polished up a bit, becomes a slippery surface. So we just don't need to use big sways of line marking like this. There's other ways to do that, and we want to be very careful with it. One thing I suspect if you do a lot of audits, you'll come across is that somebody will want to paint a big stop sign or a big give way sign at an intersection because of an overshoot issue, essentially. So just a little bit of this screen to sort of show you. It'll be some, square configuration like this, and they'll have this problem of vehicles overshooting. So they'll say, well, we're going to paint a big give way sign right here. Right? And they might be doing other features as well. Yeah, that becomes problematic for motorcyclists, just in the sense that they're probably, some of them may be subject to that see-through effect as well. So at the last minute, they'll go, oh, I've got a brake here, slam on the brakes right at the point we've added a potentially slippery surface. So you need to be just careful with those sorts of things. So lots of signs available and a whole signage suite. And I said motorcyclists are quite attuned to signage, but there are these particular motorcycle warning signs available. So they're in the Australian Standard now. So are they in the Australian Standard? Definitely in the Victorian guidance and used in Victoria a lot, and some other jurisdictions pick it up. I'm just not 100% sure they're in the Australian Standard. Anyway, the motorcyclists are quite attuned to this, and it's in a way to highlight some of those maybe specific issues for riders that may not be as much an issue for others. So the surface issues or gravel or things on the road. Now, you might think to yourself, well, hang on, why don't you just sweep the stones up rather than put a sign up? That site there is sort of the quarry up a side road, and it seems to keep dragging gravel out onto the roadway. So that's that. Yes, you want to try to rectify these issues, but these are pretty effective in terms of warning riders. But just general signage is very effective as well. Riders are quite attuned to that. Okay, let's go to strike. And so motorcyclists leave the road on the outside of curb predominantly, and that's where we see most of the crashes. So we really want to think about how we are treating the outside of curb on popular motorcycle routes and really other routes as well. So here you can see we've got a bit of a surface issue, which isn't going to be great. And then we've got these concrete blocks. This is in New Zealand as well. It's not going to be good for riders at all. It's not going to be good for other road users as well. I'm pretty sure it's there to try to protect path users here, but proper barrier systems with underrun protection, which I'll show you shortly, are going to be way better. Galvanized steel posts. So ASBAP, the Off-Road Safety Barrier Assessment Panel, who sort of look after roadside hardware, and approve things. Well, they don't actually approve things, they endorse them, but they have this category of stuff they say is deemed frangible. So they say, well, no, we deem that frangible, meaning that even in areas you're trying to make clear of hazards, you won't even consider that a hazard, and they would call standard galvanized steel posts are deemed frangible. But I'll tell you now, they're easily strong enough to kill a motorcyclist. So by the deeming of frangibility by ASBAP is for passenger vehicles. It is not for motorcyclists. So what I say is, of course we need signage out on our road network, and of course we need sign support structures for it. First and foremost is to think about, can we just get rid of some of these? Can we consolidate these? Do we need this one? Probably not. Can we combine these two? Probably yes. There's opportunities immediately to try to sort of lessen the amount of signage out there. Then in some situations, you may consider a more flexible sign range. So certainly low mount signs, there's quite a lot available on the market. We have these sort of compressed rubber ones. We have ones with hinge points at the bottom. Different things that you can use. Nothing really at this stage for anything higher than about a meter, really, due to wind load and the flexibility. We're working with Swinburne Materials Lab at the moment on some stuff to try to assist in this space for some of those higher chevron alignment markers and things like that. It's just a bit of a complex task to get it weak enough that a rider is not going to be killed or seriously injured, but strong enough to hold up to the wind load requirements in the Australian Standard, which are just massive. And you can imagine the torque associated with the height of some of these signs, and yeah, it's a challenge. Other roadside furniture things close to the edge, a rider could lean. This will be taken out by a truck before a rider, but that's all right. There's a staged photo of a rider sort of leaning around a curve just to show the lean there. Just having a think about that as well. And things like high gutters and foot pegs and those sort of things. But of course, we use roadside barriers to protect road users from roadside hazards and the like. And those are designed specifically for, well, cars and trucks. We know from about 10 years worth of research out of the University of New South Wales that motorcyclists strike barrier systems. They're either sliding on the ground or they're on the bike and they hit it and they go over the top. So it's about a 50-50 split between those two crash mechanisms. So for the one of the rider sliding, and they've sort of separated from the bike, they're sliding along, we have this underrun protection available to us. And I use the term underrun protection. There's a variety of types of ways you can do it. A lot of people talk about rub rail. Rub rail is one of the products available. There's MPR, Biker Shield. There's a few others. So that's quite effective. And you can see there, you can imagine a rider sliding along off their bike, hitting a post there. They're going to abruptly stop, and that's going to be a pretty severe incident. The underrun protection edition, they slide, they hit that, they run along it a bit, and it's less severe. And that can be retrofitted to existing barrier systems. So Type B, W-beam in Victoria, and G4 systems, or Type B for Tasmania and Victoria, and then a G4 system for the rest of Australia is what I'm talking about there. But big common W-beam systems. You can retrofit it, the manufacturers have, some of the new products like EasyGuard and Century Barrier and things have their own motorcycle underrun protection systems as well available. So here's some crash testing involving a motorcycle crash test dummy. This is European crash test protocol. So you slide a dummy at 60 kilometers an hour into the post, and yeah, that kills the motorcyclist. That's a dummy, but that's enough to kill a motorcyclist. With the addition of underrun protection, okay, it's not a friendly thing, but it's survivable, and it's within tolerances. It gets a pass. But remember, that is just at a 60 kilometer per hour impact speed. So I think that's just an indication of the limitations of trying to absorb energy of a unprotected body, essentially traveling at speeds. So there's still work to be done. But there you can see some addition of that's MPR and EasyGuard there. Why does it stop here? Anybody got a guess on that? Why do they think it stopped there? See if anybody's got an idea on that. See if anybody's still with me. Andrew's on it. End terminal operation. Well done. Prize there for Andrew. So that, for those who don't know barrier systems too well, that's the end terminal. So that's actually a different product compared to the rest of that. And this operates, when struck by a vehicle there, it sort of concertinas on itself. That extrudes that's an extruder head. This one extrudes the barrier system out, collapses on it. It's never been tested, and nobody's got a product that's been tested that sort of fits on there. So the advice is to go as far as you think you want to put your underrun protection up this way, and then put your terminal on. We don't want to compromise the safety of other road users is the reason we're thinking about that. Now, why rope safety barrier and motorcyclists? So mostly everybody understands this is not the issue that some very minority segments of the motorcycle community talk about it as. The research really shows that motorcyclists are in no more danger with this barrier type than any other barrier type. And in fact, actually, we don't use this barrier type in areas where motorcycles are at most risk because we can't. We physically can't. This is a barrier system in tension. And the areas where motorcyclists are most at risk are curves. And you, like on a popular motorcycle touring route on the Great Ocean Road or Waterfall Way or something like that, you literally just physically can't use wire rope safety barrier. Like that, they're these windy roads like this. You're looking down on it now. And okay, if you put a barrier, a tension barrier system like that and tension it up, well, as you tension it, the posts just start to creak and then it'll pop. You don't use this in windy road scenarios. So yeah, it's a real storm in a teacup from some people around this. The only thing that sort of has some merit is we don't have a great retrofit technique for wire rope safety barriers. Like we have that underrun protection. So the best we had are these stack cushions or post protectors to go around each post. It's not going to be that effective. I mean, we know that just from basic first principles because you're trying to, like if a rider was sliding and they hit that, you're trying to absorb energy. It's like a football goalpost padding, as opposed to redirect energy, which was the underrun protection, sort of redirects energy and you get all of that distance to wash off speed and energy. So it's not going to be as effective. The wires don't play a role like that. That was dismissed early on with research that there was this talk about wires slicing riders and being a cheese cutter and these sort of things. Nothing. There's no evidence to that whatsoever. The riders that have hit barrier systems up the top, they go over the top just like a rider would on any other barrier system. So yeah, but the reality is we just wouldn't use this in a lot of scenarios. It was used in some long straight. It's used in long straight sections often because it's a very flexible, friendly barrier system for passenger vehicles. This was one down to the Motorcycle Grand Prix. So this is the South Gippsland Highway, central barrier system. They put stack cushions on it because of the high motorcycle volumes on that road and high motorcycle risk associated with the sheer volume of riders that go up and down for the Grand Prix track at different points of the year. So the audit team, which I wasn't part of that audit team, they said to put some motorcycle friendly systems there. These days, this is like 20 years ago, these days, I just use a back-to-back flexible W-beam system with underrun protection. It would be much cheaper and more effective. A few photos there. A few little connection challenges. So those underrun, you just got to follow manufacturers' specifications. This was connected to the post instead of using the brackets to sit it out, which is a feature that's missing. And so that's going to, potentially have arms or legs or things being able to go through the holes. And again, we see sort of holes and gaps and thinking about what we're running riders into. And finally, speed. Well, we can influence speed of riders through a whole series of ways. One's sort of the addition of things like chevron alignment markers, although remember I did mention that we are now adding hazards to the outside of curve here for riders. So we have to think about that. We're balancing there, lessening the chance of a crash, maybe increasing the severity of it. So that's why we were trying to work on some of these frangible poles for motorcyclists. Advisory speeds, regulatory speeds, warning, all works really well and helps motorcyclists. So just in my last couple of minutes here, I'll just mention that motorcycle audits. So I talked about cyclist audits, which is where you'd ride through and you'd do all of that. Motorcycle audits sort of similar, but it's often that you engage with a motorcycle rider and have them pull them in as part of your audit team. They may or may not be a qualified auditor themselves, but you as a team will work with them. You'll discuss it. What are they feeling? What are they seeing? And you get some really good outcomes there. A couple of examples of motorcycle audits. So at the back of WBM system there, you got the rider out the front, mic'd up, talking about what they're feeling and seeing and concerned about, and you point out some other things. And we've got another one of these fact sheets for motorcyclists as well in the learning management system. I've pre-recorded a few things and put some case studies and some videos and things into the learning management system for you. But let me just do a quick before and after as Loretta gets herself ready to show you what your task can be. So here we go. We can see we've got mud, gravel on the road. We've got potholes in the area. We've got unprotected W-beam systems. We've got line marking with sort of overtaking opportunities. We've got delineation sort of weirdly spaced and configured. We've got end terminal. What is that? That's just going to spear through vehicles as well. Good spotting, Andrew. So you can see there some work to give speed advice and delineation and connect things up, and like you can just see how much more friendly that's going to be as it for. It's going to be better for everybody, but for motorcyclists especially. And this one was a very new roundabout on the South Gippsland Highway, and a well-designed roundabout, but unfortunately, not long after it opened, a motorcyclist was killed, and they were killed hitting that sign. They came in, it was a bit foggy. They didn't know there was a roundabout there. They were going fast, but they shouldn't pay for that with their life. But they hit that sign, which, as I said, easily strong enough to kill a motorcyclist. So, on those sort of things, under own protection, this is where we were trialing some of the different low mount sign products. There's a young me, very excited by these compressed air filled tubes with flexible sign on them. Yeah, they were a maintenance disaster, basically. I should not be smiling in that photo had I known what was to come. Sealing the outside, just giving a bit of run out area is very good. Sealing bell mouths so the gravel doesn't wash out onto the roadway as vehicles exit that, and sealing it back a bit. It's a gold standard, that one. It doesn't necessarily need all of that works. It can just be sealed back a little bit. And we won't do the quiz because I think I need to give Loretta lots of time to show you what you're going to do. But anybody does have any questions, pop them into the chat. Otherwise, over to you, Loretta, to at least show them where everything is, and then I'll just take them through the what to write in the audit report and those sort of things.
Thank you. All righty. Can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
Excellent.
We're in the learning management system.
I am, thanks. All right, so I know all of you have been in here because you have completed your quizzes and research topic assignments, so thank you. Today, module 4. So let's go through what are the tasks for this module. Ken did mention quite a lot of videos throughout this session, so please feel free to have a look at those videos as well as the case study and some other additional resources. But for today's task, there is a quiz. Again, I know you've already done the quiz, so just attempt that quiz there. I'll go back a step. A couple of things you do need to do before you complete your site assessment, please. So firstly, reading the SWIMS document. So ensure that you click on there and read that document, and then click on the agreement document as well. So you just need to make sure that you've read it and understand all the safety aspects, of course, that we know that you've done that. So clicking on that there, it's like set up like a quiz. So you just answer that question. And then most importantly is the site visit. So we have allocated you all a site address to complete your mock assessment. So you will find your name in brackets next to a PDF, basically, or part of the PDF. So it's basically an address that we've allocated from the address that you provided during your registration. So if it's, completely unsuitable, please contact me at training at safesystemsolutions.com.au, and that way we can find you an alternative site. So please let me know. But basically with this assignment, there is a template. So this is what you need to follow. I'll click on that and then we'll go through it together. But once you do that, you do need to save it as a PDF. So when you've completed your report, save it as a PDF and then submit it in here. So clicking on add submission, you'll have your PDF and then you drag it in there and then save changes. There are some participants that may not be able to upload it because of your firewalls, like I know Transport for New South Wales participants. Simply email it to me at the training email and then we will add it in your profile. So let's get onto this. Most importantly, we'll go into the template so can run through it as well. It's just loading up. Alrighty.
So maybe just open up one of the designs so we can have a look at that. So here we go. Let's random design here. Baldwin Street. So somebody will be going to this location. And so this one is a design of a roundabout. That roundabout will not exist. It does not exist. You'll get there. It won't be a roundabout. And your job is to assess for us what are the safety issues when they build that roundabout. Not what are the safety issues now. What are the safety issues when they build the roundabout? This is what a design stage audit is. Now, this is a very early design stage audit. And in fact, you'll discover all of them are very early design stages, very conceptual. We do that intentionally for a few reasons. One is that just the time. Like if we gave you a full detailed design set, it'd be a very big, massive, really long assignment. We wanted to keep it fairly easy to understand, and we needed to get something in your local area. So the reason I stress this is occasionally somebody submits us an audit of the existing conditions. They've ignored the design. That's not what we want. That's not what we're asking you to do. Tell us the safety issues with the design. So you'll find that site. If you have any trouble finding where it is, then get in contact with us, of course, but it'll have some road names and you should be able to find it quite well. So then you'll go to your Word document, wherever that's snuck away to, there it is. And anywhere there is highlighted yellow, you're going to have to do something. So you're going to write the name of the intersection there, and any abbreviations you use, you can summarize there. You're going to give us a short introduction, and you're also going to put a little snip of where this location is. And yes, replace that map. So then, little bits of information to change. Now, we've given you this template. You can use this as a real audit template in the future. So you're welcome to do that. Put your own branding on it, change your colors, whatever you want. It's not like we're, this conforms with current Austroads guidance requirements. So please use it. So that's why we've left a lot of that info in there, and you see what a real audit would look like. Now, for this one, you're going to, if the drawing you get has a particular number on it, pop it in there. You might just say none provided. So a lot of them probably don't have a number, but in real ones, you certainly would. And all the other information you'd get in a proper audit. But for this mock one, we've sort of streamlined it a bit for you. You put your name in there, and put your employer if you want. You don't need to though. And you're going to give us a short description of the existing conditions. Don't give us pages and pages. Just briefly talk about, the speed environment, it's an arterial road or this, and then keep going down. And you are going to go out there only during the day. So you'll discover this when you go through the safe work method statement, the SWIMS that Loretta mentioned. We've assessed these sites. They can be done very safely as long as you're safe in your operations. You don't go out there intoxicated, and you don't go out and try and measure lane widths or anything like that. You stand back, you just observe. So that's in the safe work method statement. And also there we've said we don't want people going out at night. So we only want you out there during the day, but we do require you to go and visit the site. Even though it's a design stage, we require you to visit the site. So you put the information of that in. This is just general info. Now, after you've done everything, you'll give your sort of overarching comments, but you'll have to have done all your work first to usually come back to that. And, once you've finished everything, you sign it. You actually sign it off. That's part of the audit process. And there's only one photo we want from this, and that's just to show us that you did go to the site. So take us, there I am out in New South Wales somewhere in Sydney, take a selfie and just replace that. In a real audit, you'll give lots of photos of the site, the surrounds and everything like that. For this assignment, just give us one photo, show us you went to the site. Be wearing your high-vis vest too. We want to see you in a high-vis vest in the photo. And then this is the meat of the actual audit from the technical perspective and everything like that. So all of that other stuff is important to the audit process, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to provide us 3 audit findings, only 3, right? You might pick up 25 issues, but you're only going to pick 3 of them and you're going to write them up. But you are going to write them up properly, right? And we've given you an example above there of good practice. So you can go, oh, okay, I see, I'm sort of following these elements. That's a different site, so you won't be able to, repeat that. You're going to have to identify it, but we want it written out properly. And I'll tell you how the markers are going to look at this. They're going to say, have they followed the formula for audit findings? Is there a nice sort of photo or little diagram or something so I can see what they're talking about? Have they provided a risk rating? Is that risk rating in accordance with the risk matrix up above? Have they colored that cell corresponding color to the risk matrix? Have they used FSI if it's to the right of the line in the risk matrix, in the risk table? Have they provided a recommendation? Have they categorized that recommendation into primary or supporting? I think that's about what they will look at. They will make some commentary around the reasonability of the audit finding, whether the risk rating is very high or low or those sort of things. That's not sort of pass-fail stuff. Usually that's just guidance. Usually just being able to follow that process and correctly fill stuff out is where you're going to go. But 3, we're just looking for 3 findings. That's another one to keep this within check in terms of the time commitment. You leave that right column blank because as an auditor, that's not your responsibility to fill any of that out. That's the whoever receives this report in an audit, the council officer, the department officer, the project manager, whoever it is. So you don't fill that out. So once you've done all of that, you'll fill those 3 out and then you'll go back and write that little summary, overarching comments or whatever. And then save it, PDF it, and follow Loretta's instructions. Drop it into the learning management system. Now, if you are there going, I don't quite understand this, I'm concerned about this, what if I can't find any issues, any of those things, don't get too concerned because we have senior auditors available to help you through this, to coach you, to guide you. So you simply would need to just email through and say, hey, can I talk to somebody about this? A question's come in. Are you doing this in groups? Okay, so it's a good question. Thank you. Some of these sites, you'll see there's a couple of people listed, and you're able to, you can go out there together if you know that person or you want to, get out there together, you can and chat about it, but you need to submit one report each, and they can't be the same, right? So you're each having to come up with your own wording and findings and the like. Now, we wouldn't mark you down if like two people had found the same issue, but it was obvious like they wrote it up themselves and it was, like that sort of stuff. But you do need to submit your own report. Of course, in a real audit, you would be in a team and you'd only do one report, and you'd but for this, for training purposes, we need to be assured that you know that process. Pop in any other questions you've got. 80%, yes. So you have 3 attempts. So if you did submit it and it came back and it was 50%, they will give you lots of comments as to where you need to improve. And you could request a meeting at that point, get some guidance, but you'll have the ability to submit it again, update it and submit it again. So what I suggest you do is straight after this, download that design. Maybe click on another one. Let's have another look at another design, random design. Download your design. Make sure you know where it is. Okay. Oh, Haymarket round. It's a ripper. Whoever's got that. Yeah, I've done a real audit on that job at one point in my life. So your mock one, yeah, it's interesting. So download it. Make sure you know where it is. Make sure it is convenient. You're not going to have to travel a long way to get there. Look at the safe work method statement. Make sure you're comfortable that say you will be safe. Download the template. Make sure you know everything, and then our next session is a great opportunity for you to ask any questions. We've allocated a lot of time to just discuss anything that anybody's already confused about, or says, what is this intersection, or what kind of issues would you be expecting here? We don't need you to find the highest risk issues. We just want to find issues and write them up nicely. But we've got time allocated in the next session for that if anybody does want to have a chat about their audit, and others will learn from that. Don't miss anything, Loretta?
No, covered everything, I think. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, well done, everyone. You've got to the point in the audit course now where you prove you understand the audit process and you can identify issues. Next session, I'll be taking you through some of the things around accreditation, legal liability, a bit more sort of policy, road safety audit policy in different jurisdictions when they're done, and those sort of things. So if you've got any questions around that, I'll look forward to chatting to you about them then. Thanks, everyone. And
thank you. See you next time.
yeah, thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ken.